Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Fun topic, sort of. Let's do it. Tell me about a prank you committed that went horribly wrong, ethically, or just completely backfired. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My son was about 8 or so, and part of his chores was to take the garbage bag out to the pails. He'd generally do this around sunset, and though it was only a few feet to the garbage cans, I would always tell him some complete nonsense like, "Do you have a tube of toothpaste? You'll want one if you need to repel a werewolf. They prowl at this time of day," or some bizarre combination of things to ward off some random supernatural entity. Ghosts, you need sunscreen. Zombies, they hate CD cases, etc., etc. Like the intelligent son he is, he always chalked it up to his our dad making up some ridiculous story to frighten him and never fell for it. One day, I must have irked him with all my attempts because he told me something like, "All that stuff is made up, and you couldn't scare me if you tried." Sounded like a challenge to me. As soon as he walked out the door, I quickly improvised a costume out of an old wig, a set of Billy Bob teeth, and some gay-ass cloak my wife bought at a Renaissance festival. It was not a convincing work of horror. I looked more like a cross-dressing meth head with rotten teeth, but I hid behind the door and pounced on him as soon as he came in. He immediately fell to the floor, screaming in terror, and was still shaking after I removed the garish ensemble. After some groveling on my part, he forgave me quickly, but he was quieter than usual for the rest of the evening. Bad dad, terrible parenting. That was 9 years ago, and I still feel guilty when I think of it. My good friend and his girlfriend were always pranking each other and horsing around. One night after the movies, walking back to the car down a dark side street, she said, "I'll race you back to the car." My friend gave her a short head start and then set off in pursuit. She was squealing with delight as she knew she was winning. A few yards later, she hears this huge crash and looks back to see two huge guys have jumped her boyfriend, tackled him to the ground, and are holding his face in the wet, smelly gutter, slapping handcuffs onto him. The cop yells out, "It's okay, honey. We've got him now. You're safe and can stop running." One night in middle school, my best friend and I sneaked out around 2 a.m. or so. We used to F with his neighbor. Well, this one night I was dressed in black and walking up to his back door to put Vaseline on the back doorknob when suddenly the door flung open. I dropped into the darkness. The guy came out and pissed in the backyard about 3 feet away from my head. Little drops of his pee were hitting me in the face, and I was too terrified to move. I sometimes think he knew I was there. We were all CS majors, so I thought we'd just get a cheap laugh from this. A friend of ours was out for a while and left his laptop out in the open, so we decided to play a little joke on him once he gets back. We took a screenshot of his desktop, cropped out the taskbar, and used that picture as the desktop background, and then moved all of the icons off the desktop. I had to leave then, but from what I heard, the guy came back from a prelim that he had just bombed, and upon finding that his laptop no longer worked, smashed the living crap out of it and proceeded to weep his eyes out. He was also just dumped earlier last week. We felt really bad about it, so we ended up pooling together enough money to get him a new laptop for his birthday. Yeah, you gotta consider all the variables. If somebody's having a bad day or a bad week or a bad breakup, maybe you shouldn't pretend like his laptop's broken. Nothing too weird. At my apartment at college, my back faces the door when I'm on the computer, so if I'm wearing headphones, it's easy as hell to freak the shit out. So, one time my roommate crawls around my legs and under my desk all stealthy. Well, he waited too long because I leaned back and closed the door, then pulled my D out to have a fap. Needless to say, the surprise was shared. This was back when I lived in Ukraine. We had a crazy old lady as a neighbor that would always yell at us if the ball went into her yard, and she was just a mean old bitch. Well, one day, we had a great idea of taking a ton of catnip and putting it everywhere. Let's just say we greatly underestimated the amount of stray cats in our neighborhood. Back then, there was no neutering of your cat, so there were probably 50 plus stray cats in her yard in ours. The prank did succeed because she called the town priest to bless her house. The guy came dressed in his Orthodox gowns and with only holy water. It was funny until the cats ate a few of my dad's racing pigeons, and he knew I was part of it, so I got my ass beat royally. When I was in the Marines, I was standing guard, stateside, no real threat, and it is guaranteed that FNGs get effed with, especially in the wee hours in the morning when no one is around. We stood guard 24/7 and 4 to 6 hour shift. FNGs always got posted by themselves in towers, which were basically 90 feet tall cement pillars with a tiny 6x6 room on top out in the middle of the woods. It was well-known lore in the company that a Marine had put his M16 on a 3-round burst and blown his head off in one of these towers one night in the late 80s, and we always told the new guys that you could hear strange noises in that tower. There was still a mark on the wall that was supposedly where one of the bullets struck when it exited his skull. The way the towers were set up, you either had to have the key to get in the door at the bottom, or the guy at the top could push a button and release the door to let you in. Either way, an alarm sounded to let him know the door was open. The lights in the metal stairwell leading to the top were either dim or non-existent, so a guy standing at the top looking down the hatch couldn't really see all the way to the bottom. Well, on one middle of the night post, we let the FNG in, and he climbed up and relieved the off-going sentry. I left, and left a friend lingering just inside the door at the base of the tower. The friend waits about 15 minutes in silence, then starts making just a little bit of noise, knocking quietly on pipes and shit with his helmet in the darkness. FNG starts calling it in on the radio, and we tell him not to worry about it. The friend starts pounding louder and louder, and eventually it's just rhythmic clank, 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 clank. FNG calls it in again, sounding ever so nervous, gets told to stand by. Then the friend kicks the tower door open from the inside, which sets the alarm off. FNG has CCTV view of the outside of the door in the top of the tower, and it sees it fly open. The friend starts running up the metal stairs in the dark, screaming. FNG starts screaming too, slams the hatch at the top of the tower, grabs his rifle and racks an effing round and clicks it off safe. Friend hears the unmistakable sound of the bolt going home and realizes he's probably a few steps away from getting shot. Stops, calls out to the FNG, lets him know he's just being effed with. The round racking thing was a big effing deal in our command though, as it basically was the third or fourth step in the escalation of force to deadly force, and was supposed to be reported up the chain whenever it occurred, which was hardly ever. Fortunately, we smoothed things over with the FNG and no one ever found out. Good thing too, because the next guy at that command who racked around when it wasn't required got kicked out of the military. TL, DR, don't scare the shit out of people with guns. Yeah. I recall a story where a couple in cheap plastic hula skirts snuck away to a bathroom to make out. A friend saw them while using the bathroom and lit their skirts as a joke, but they went up really fast and burned both people very badly. 10 or 11 years old, a friend of mine had picked up a dried palm branch that had fallen off of a tree and was about to throw it like a javelin. The end was dragging on the ground, and I thought it'd be funny to stomp on it as he threw. Instead of the amusing result I'd envisioned, one of the leaves effing impaled his hand, went right through the muscle between his thumb and forefinger and out the other side. Almost 10 years ago, a friend of mine and his friends planned to kidnap a friend, which included blindfolding her and tying her up while en route to her surprise birthday. While in transit, the vehicle was clipped by a vehicle running a red light, and the birthday girl was rushed to the hospital. After waking from her coma, she was mentally and physically impaired. In college, I thought it would be funny to play an April Fool's joke on my mom. I got my then girlfriend to agree to convince my mom that we had gotten engaged. The morning of April Fool's Day, I called my mom and told her that the night before I'd asked my girlfriend to marry me, and she said yes. It was then that my girl took the phone from me and started going on and on about the proposal and how excited she was. Then she hung up. I called back immediately, but the line was busy and stayed busy for the next 45 minutes. By the time I got through, my mother had called my entire extended family and told them I was engaged. When I told her that it was all a joke, she started crying and asking why I would do that to her. I then had to call each member of my family and explain to them what happened. I put off both of my grandmothers until the end. They were the worst calls. They wouldn't really let me explain. One yelled at me and called me an asshole, and the other just hung up on me when I told her. It was pretty terrible. Then my girlfriend got it in her mind that us eventually getting married was just a joke to me and dumped me. I effing hate April Fool's Day. Coworker left his computer unlocked when he walked away from his desk. I went to the control panel and changed his mouse cursor speed to the lowest setting. When he got back, he ended up calling the IT guy, thinking that something was wrong with the computer. I ended up running over there to fix the problem and fessed up and laughed, thinking it was a hilarious prank. From that day forth, the IT guy would just be a complete ass to me, and even made some false accusations to try and get me in trouble with my boss. Simple. Roommate whacked me in the nuts. He was an Irishman. It's in their nature. I waited till later, when he came out of the community bathroom, and whacked him in the nuts, hard. This continued for way too long. Neither of us could ever let our guard down for a second, and it became a bit hostile. I know, cliche, but never again. Nobody wins. My friends and I have always been big pranksters, but this is probably the best case of one of those pranks backfiring. Only the twist is that I was responsible not for the prank, but for the backfire. This was around sophomore year of high school. For some reason, I lost the time. A couple of friends of mine, twins, thought it would be funny to trick me into eating some chocolate laxatives they had gotten their hands on. The chocolates looked just like Hershey's, after they scratched the L's off. So, their plan was to give everyone at their get-together some chocolates, but the inconspicuous-looking laxatives to me. However, they made the mistake of telling another friend what they were planning, who then promptly informed me about it. Lesson: know your position in the hierarchy of friends before blabbing to everyone about your insidious plans. Who do you think you are, Dr. Evil? With a few hours before the get-together, I went to the pharmacy, bought a Hershey's bar, as well as a small bottle of extremely powerful liquid laxative. You can probably see where this is going. Conveniently for me, we were all hanging around their chest-high trampoline when they started offering everyone the chocolate. Now, at this point, I feel the need to editorialize a bit and say that their handling of it at this moment was pretty pathetic, and I don't think I would have bought it for a second, even without prior knowledge, especially considering how the chocolate laxatives had only the vaguest resemblance to a regular chocolate. Plus, seriously, who breaks apart plates and arranges Hershey bars? But I digress. Anyway, with the trampoline as my cover, I tossed the chocolates they gave me into the grass and started to eat the real Hershey bar I'd been keeping hidden. The twins began giggling conspicuously, almost immediately. Boy, am I going to shit so hard? Haha, shut up. They start to ask leading questions, trying to gauge how close I am to dropping a Helen Hunt. Then they're called inside, thoughtlessly leaving behind 2 half-empty cans of root beer. I saw my chance and I took it, filling the cans with the liquid laxative. When they got back, they drank every last drop of those cans, still grinning and giggling like a couple of Japanese schoolgirls hanging around the massagers at Sharper Image. They even remarked to one another that their root beer tasted funny, but drank it all anyway. Anyway, long story short, Mr. and Mrs. Twin cracked and did the whole booyah thing that people were so fond of in the late 90s, only then I showed them the remains of the Hershey bar and the empty laxative bottle and explained what had just transpired. Their faces turned pale, but they somehow couldn't accept that their brilliant scheme had backfired. They outright refused to believe it for about an hour. After an hour, I was convinced that because I'd spilled the whole bottle between the two of them, it wasn't enough to have any impact. Boy, was I wrong. Turns out like 4 ounces of something you only need a teaspoon of is more than enough to get things moving. Things went from disappointing to hilarious to frightening in a hurry. They went to the bathroom once, then twice, and then it was obvious that the stuff had worked. It got so bad that they began fighting with one another over the only bathroom in their house. I forgot which one got in there first, but the other was essentially shit out of luck, huh? Not long after it started going downhill, everyone was ordered to leave the house. Funny, because it was supposed to be a weekend-long camping sort of thing, but yeah, plans have a way of changing. That was a Saturday, and they weren't heard from for the rest of the week. Felt terrible, even if they were trying to do the same thing to me. I just felt awful about what they were going through. I've always played pranks on friends and family, but I'm pretty faithful to the 5-minute rule, which is to say that if it ruins your life for more than 5 minutes, it's not really a prank anymore. It's just sadism. This is one of the rare exceptions, which I knew going in, but I didn't expect it to go as far as it did. A few years later, while in college, I heard from a friend who attended the event about some of the grisly details. Allow me to illustrate in the least graphic way possible I possibly can at this hour. You know how when you're sick and you've puked out every last drop of undigested food and liquid, but your body just keeps trying to heave more up, even though there's nothing there? Well, imagine that same scenario, only with your ass, for days. That was almost 12 years ago. I still have mixed feelings about what I did, and I don't talk to those guys anymore. Was it worth it? Not at all. Since it was before the days of YouTube. TL, DR, counter prank. Learned about a friend trying to trick me into eating laxatives. Ended up performing the old switcheroo, and they were sick for a week, or possibly forever. Mixed feelings. Kids, don't F with laxatives. Fun pranks are just that, and I like your 5-minute rule, but laxatives and things like that could really do damage to people, so stay away from stuff like that. You're better than that, but lesson learned. Don't do it again. So my friend was telling me what she did the other day, and I was mortified. She is kind of seeing this guy. She just broke up with her boyfriend about a month ago, and she and her sister thought it would be amusing to test this new guy and see if he acts shady, as she puts it. So apparently her sister has an app on her phone that generates a random number and lets you text people from that number so they don't know who you are. Her sister starts texting this guy, pretending she's a girl who knows him. The idea was to see if he played along and acted interested in who she was. However, he just gets confused. When he says he doesn't know who she is, she starts reciting her knowledge on who he is, where he lives, and even down to what vehicle he drives. So of course, this creeps him out. Meanwhile, my friend is driving over to his house, getting a play-by-play on what is happening. He's legitimately concerned and even texts my friend letting her know what is going on. So my friend pulls up into the driveway, and her sister texts this guy saying, "Oh, so that dumb blonde bitch is back, huh?" And he freaks. He runs out to her car, grabs her and takes her quickly inside. So now they have taken it too far, because he's all paranoid that some weird girl he doesn't even know is watching or stalking him. And my friend and her sister won't tell him that it was them either, because they know they took it too far. Feel sorry for the guy. TL, DR. My friend played a horrible text prank on the guy she is seeing, and now he thinks some crazy person is stalking him.